So, grown black folks talk. Even a stop clock is right twice a day. Learning about a virtuous circle from a man whose virtues are being argued about right now. I realized something yesterday in my contemplations of all that's going on in the today, according to one of Kevin Samuel's friends, is supposed to be his memorial. Although the announcement said Sunday, May 14th, it's actually Saturday. So I'm not sure which day this is supposed to happen. But I said in an earlier video that even a stop clock is right twice a day. There's something that Mr. Samuels did really well that is to be admired and imitated. And I mention it because I know even though there are mostly Black women who are mentioning, this is one of the realities of life. Unless you went to business school or the military, put a pin there. I'll explain it in a moment. There are a lot of things in civilian life in the Black community you're not going to be exposed to whether you went to college or you didn't go to college. If you didn't go to college, but you didn't have a business mentor, there are a lot of things you wouldn't be exposed to. If you did go to college, but you didn't take business, there are a lot of things you're not going to be exposed to. And if you didn't go to the military afterwards, what you did not learn is how to build a unit. It dawned on me the reason why the manosphere is in great grief and many of the younger men who follow it are in great grief is because there's something that we missed. Mr. Samuels was driving what in business, now I need you to just keep your emotions in check. This is the term, a virtuous circle. Many of us have heard the term vicious cycle. This is a business term. Basically, what it is the big referral circle. If a group of local businesses comes together and decides, and if you do, you can do joint ventures where two businesses decide to work together or three, but sometimes businesses don't literally want to be, to form a formal joint venture where they choose a project to work together on. What they want to do is they decide to refer each other to one another. But generally, what's going to end up happening is one of those businesses is probably going to be dominant. In other words, it has the most customers, it has the most throughput. And if that business does what it's supposed to do, it will drive customers to all the others, and then they'll refer to each other. That's a referral circle or a virtuous circle. It dawned on me yesterday. One of the reasons that the grief is so huge in the manosphere of Kevin Samuels is he was the engineer. He was driving this big old virtual circle. As far as my research goes, Kevin Samuels had close to 1.3, 1.4 million subscribers. Word is that 70% of them were women. Well, women are bigger consumers than men. Even if we sit and we talk about how Black women in a few 10 years will be out earning Black men and actually are closer. Right now, on average, Black women still are not, but that gap will close up. And they're the only group of men and women that is like that. Well, okay, if your audience is 70% women, then you have your big consumer bases, which is there. And you also have men that have trust in the brand and are willing to spend on whatever you said. So Mr. Samuels was really good. I remember I heard about him. I never listened to him closely. That's a story for story time about why I didn't. But I remember there were younger content creators who got shouted out by him and Mr. O'Shea Drew Jackson. And this is how they got on. And I remember to notice this about 2 years ago. They gave credit to certain people for shouting them out. So Mr. Samuels did his work in getting other people on. He had the ability to be able to bring people in and then he directed them to other people. So he was the driver of the business part of the manosphere. He drove this. He helped other people get on. So even though we look at it from outside and don't necessarily see much virtue in it, I'm talking about from a business perspective. Every major movement has different people that play different roles. 100 years ago, there was a gentleman, a future German chancellor, who, while his party, NSDAP, I'll give you the common short for that in just a little bit, but I just want you to listen before, again, don't turn your ears off. His party was out of favor, and it was very much persecuted by the Weimar Republic that was in power at this time in Germany. But his role was he was the drummer. He kept the music playing for the 10 years that they were in exile. Some of their members, including him, were jailed. But he was a very gifted speaker. Now, I tell you, he's a very gifted speaker. He was so gifted that he was described as under the anointing. In other words, spiritual powers were willing to work with this man. He was so good at what he did. Of course, 55 million lives would be lost when the drummer became the Führer. And unfortunately for the Third Reich, Adolf Hitler's transition was not complete in that he did not know how to run the other parts of how you do this. But for a long time, he did a reasonably good job because the old Junker class of people, the old military class, knew what they were doing. So they were able to rebuild the Wehrmacht. So everybody has a position. Bad things happen when people get out of position. So if your engine was running and somebody suddenly dies and no one knows who's going to fill that spot because there's a role to be played. Now, let me also go back to why, and military people have an advantage. Now, I'm a veteran's daughter, so I'm attuned to the idea of units and how units run. And I get along well with my father. So I've learned a lot from him about this. And then a lot of his friends, a lot of people go to church with the veterans. So I understand how units run. And I've worked with all these older men who are veterans who are doing things in the community because they know how to build units that operate. I know a lot of older Black male generals. I make a very good colonel. I know my role. So that's unit building. A lot of military people know how to do this. So I don't know what Kevin Samuel's status, civilian or veteran. I don't know enough about him. I don't think so, because I know he came down with cancer relatively early in life. So, but he defeated it and lived another, 30 years? But I don't know if he had time for military service with that going on. However, somewhere he picked up this virtuous circle idea. It's basically unit building, and everybody plays their role. Unfortunately for the manosphere, nobody knew that the engineer was going to leave on May 5th, and there was not preparation. This is why he is being grieved. He is being grieved so heavily. Because again, to the men who are grieving him, this was literally an on-ramp to a side of life and a procedure that most of us do not have access to. Now, let me change gears. Now that you know what it is, a group of people that tend to refer one another to each other and just do this consistently and put each other on and do this consistently, you could look at it somewhere else. An excellent Black female content creator is a veteran. Shout out to Miss Stephanie Perry. And thank you for your consideration. If you ever see this, thank you for your continuing service, Miss Perry. Miss Stephanie Perry, not only does she have a certain amount of influence, and these are not what you would call, they're not in the Black women empowerment space. These are women are like, no, you don't need to divest from Black men. That's not the point. You need to divest with this entire toxic American dream that was not built to support Black women. That's a whole different paradigm. Like I've said before, they're not out here talking about it. They're out here being about it. They're on a whole different journey. But Stephanie Perry is also a co-founder of what's called the Exodus Network. So what she's also showing us how to do, military background helps, how to benefit from network effects, how to benefit in being part of a unit. So you personally don't have to work as hard because the unit is pulling all that weight. Miss Perry not only refers other people, Adelia Borshade, Picky Girl Travels the World, Rashida Dow, Sheeters on the Loose, Danny Lee, who does coaching for those recovering from narcissistic behavior, and many, 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 many more. Alicia Renice, who is the artist, who is a subscriber, also on the Themis and Talk Show. Shout out to Themis and Talk. Shout out to Alicia Renice. These are people, I know all of these people because Stephanie puts them on. And she also goes on their channels and then brings her people to their channels. And she has a YouTube course where she teach you, not only does she put you on, she's going to teach you how to put yourself on. And again, the other thing she's founded is the Exodus Network, where there are all kinds of women on this same journey who are able to get together and support one another. This is an even bigger example of a virtuous circle. The other thing about this to understand, Kevin Samuels left a subscriber base of approximately, I mentioned it before, 1.3 million people, and there is a report that 70% of them were women. Since the engineer of that building, getting all those people together, you got to look at it this way. It's like somebody said about Jerry Springer. You don't have to agree with him, but you have to understand if a man has that many people listening to him, they're looking for something that they need. You know, we talk about boys suffering, Black men suffering because they don't have their father. Well, Black girls are too. And if you would take Kevin Samuels as your father, you are in a certain level of need. The other thing I would have to say about this is, and I'm a small content creator, I just talk to the people that I talk to. I just have this channel again because people are sitting up talking about, I wish you were my aunt, I wish you were my mom. So I'm just a small time minister. My Sunday school class just went up by 20, but a factor of 20, but it's going to grow very slowly. But for those of you that, if any of you really have real channels, if 70% of Kevin Samuel's subscribers were women, we need to go get them. Now, I'm a small channel. I'm only going to be able to get maybe one or two. But these are women who are looking for a way to find what they need in their life. We need to go get them. Now, like I said, I don't have the capacity to reach everybody, but I want us to look at the subscriber base of Kevin Samuels with a little bit more compassion. If 70% of these are young women or youngish or early middle age, still looking for something, they need our help. And I think that we are doing them a disservice by poking fun at their grief. Now, everybody has a right to their own opinions and the way that they want to respond to people's death. But as a minister, I tend to try to look into more of the long-term future of these things. 70% of 1.3 million people is 910,000 people. Darn near a million women, if this is true. They need someone to compassionately go get them and bring them to a place where they can build a message that really will build them and not tear them down. They never needed to be told they were average at best. God doesn't create any junk. That's what they needed to hear. They needed to hear a message full of grace, but because this man knew how to drive the engine and a lot of his competitors didn't, they came to him. The train has gone up into the station. Now, these 70% of his subscribers need to get on board somewhere else. I propose that we go get these young ladies and middle-aged ladies. I propose that we go get them and guide them to channels where their humanity and where their value as women will be affirmed. What they were looking for from Kevin Samuels, there are Black female content creators have the ability to provide. Now, let me be also very clear about something else. This is going to end up being a separate video, I think. Once you know what the problem is, you do not have to keep being re-exposed and be made angry over and over and over again. Mr. Samuels has some counterparts that are Black women that tend to keep their subscriber base all riled up and not moving forward. Now, if we do nothing, if we don't take this seriously, that's where a lot of these women will end up. And that's not going to help them grow either. I don't know if, I think it behooves all of us to come to terms with where the Black community really is. Okay, it's not in good shape. The problem predates Kevin Samuels. It will go on after his death. Nothing has stopped. There are issues between Black men and women. And they're not going to go away anytime soon. But what you want to do as a person is to be able to find a place where you can grow and where you can heal from your traumas. This is a small spot. I have a little bit over 400 subscribers. I don't have all the answers for you, but I'm going to put, as usual, our healing resources in chat. I'm also going to put Stephanie Perry's channel and also the Exodus Network channel as a potential source of finding content creators who, but perhaps speak to the need for growth as a person. I think both Black men and women are at a moment where we are so used to externalizing our issues that we are angry with our counterparts for not being able to solve problems they're not meant to solve. As the Bible says it so well, Our ancestors said it this way: every pot got to stand on its own bottom. The Bible says every man must carry his own burden. And when he talks to every man, in this case, we're talking about every person. Default, because the Greek and the Hebrew language is default to human, the man for human, but this is individual. Every individual has to carry their own burden. Black men are not the reason, Black women, that you are not growing. Because growth is something you have to choose for yourself. Gentlemen, Black women are not the reason that you are not growing. Growing is something you have to choose for yourself. So if there are 910,000 people, they need to be bought into women and also the men, 30%. They need to be bought into virtuous circles. I'm not going to say anything about the male content creators here that I think could do that job. If they're not aware of it, that's their problem. But I am a Black woman who mentors younger Black girls and women. I think we need to go and get these people as much as possible and to bring them into a space where they can learn to value themselves better than Mr. Samuels could teach them now that that train is in its station. But like I said, even a stop clock is right twice a day. Kevin Samuels built what in business is called a virtuous circle. So it is an opportunity for us to understand what that is and to build legitimately virtuous circles, to take some of these people, these women in particular, who are looking for ways to better their lives, looking for ways of growth, and to bring them in and to have them in a circle of people that are going to build them as human beings as opposed to tearing them down. Okay, that was a lot. Again, we're going to talk about issues as much as we can find good things that actually help us grow. We're not dealing with Mr. Samuel's content. You notice I have not said anything about the things that he said about women per se. I've stuck to the objective facts that we can know, more or less for sure. There's a lot of things that we could go back and forth and feel a certain way about. I want us to pluck out what we can use going forward. Mr. Samuel's gone. We're here. So we take what we can and we keep it moving. All right. Y'all have a good day now. Goodbye.